Hello, everyone, and welcome to InvenTank, the show for inventors where I'm joined by a special guest host each and every week to help answer your burning invention questions. I'm your host, Lisa Lloyd, and we're streaming live today on LinkedIn and on Facebook, or you may be catching us on your favorite podcasting platform. In a moment, I'll open up the Q&A, so feel free to drop all of your questions and comments in the comments section at any time throughout our program, and we'll get to them in the order that they come in. Joining as my special guest host today is Nate Bernklau. Nate is a drive systems engineer at Bell Flight and a former drivetrain engineer or design, architect at John Deere. We've all heard of that. He has worked on a variety of product design projects, including composite material formulation, aerospace design, and drivetrain system designs for agricultural equipment. He's definitely an expert innovator. In a moment, we'll dive into the questions from our audience. But Nate, thank you. I'm so excited to have you with me today to help me answer all their questions. So thank you.
Yeah, what a great intro. Yeah, it's like, oh, did I really do all that stuff?
I just stole it from your LinkedIn, so.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and just enjoy your audience, enjoy all of your other live casts, and it's just great to be here. And hopefully I can help people where they might be stuck when it comes to inventing and problem solving. I've been working on it for about 16 years professionally now at various corporations. Also tried my hand at several inventions on the side. I know how difficult it can be for independent inventors to get going. So,
yep. What is a drivetrain design architect?
Well, think on a big machine. I'm going to go on mute here. Big machine like a combine, we have an engine that might be towards the back of the machine, and that might be several feet away from, say, something in the front. Or say like a helicopter, you've got an engine in the back and you've got the rotor spinning around on top. And what a drive systems design engineer does is figure out how to route that power from the engine to whatever the thing is spinning. And in our homes, it's very easy for us to route power because we just go and plug it into an outlet, and then we flip a switch on our fan or our light or whatever, and it comes on. But in a mechanical system, I don't have electrons flowing through cables like a cord. I need to actually transmit that power mechanically through like a belt or a shaft or a drive. And so there's all kinds of various tools in our toolbox we use to connect the engine with whatever it is on the other end that needs to be turning. And what makes it really fun is it's safety critical, because if some of those shafts ever stop turning, very severe catastrophic things can happen to the people inside of those vehicles. So we have to make sure that our designs go above and beyond and are as perfect as they can possibly be.
So you're basically like a space, or what is it? Oh my God, what is going on with my brain today? The joy of being live. I can't edit that out. Yes, even I have brain farts. Navy term, by the way. It's a space engineer, like rocket scientist. Oh my God, see, this is not that hard to remember. You're basically like a rocket scientist or engineer, so to speak.
Oh, yeah, we both, maybe it's not quite
that fancy
up to that level, but aerospace and the helicopter drivetrain systems, it does get, we use a lot of similar techniques as those industries would use. And of course, whether you're designing a lawnmower or really even consumer products, I mean, safety is just paramount. And when you're dealing with loads and critical systems, you want to make sure that those things are done properly. And I would recommend it to any inventors that are working on products that do have a safety component. It's worth the time to get it reviewed by a professional engineer. You really should do that just to avoid any kind of safety or lawsuits or anything in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if it fails, not only is it a bad user experience, but it's potentially very dangerous too. I got it. All right. So you mentioned earlier that you have watched our show before, which, by the way, for those of you who are just joining us, Nate actually came, he attended a program, and then we started talking inside LinkedIn and chatting. And then I got to know what he does. And I felt like he said some things to me that really stood out that are important to me to share with the world. And so since we were aligned, I thought he could come on and help talk about design thinking today. And I know that that's an important or critical part of the process for you as well as for me. So when when we were talking about design thinking, and for our audience sake, maybe we should just start with you explaining what exactly design thinking is.
Yeah, design thinking is really kind of comes out of IDEO and Stanford University, the D School, like way back when. It's kind of morphed and means different things to different people. So I'm more of a practitioner than an educator. So those that are listening that know way more about it than me can go more into the depth on the academic theory of it. But it's also very practical. And from a practical point of view, it's really, to me, I can kind of break it down into two parts. One, it's designing the right thing and then designing the thing right. That's about as simple as I can make it. And a lot of folks, when we come up with a problem or something that we want to solve that's important to us, we just jump in and solve it and make some, little invention, and it's great. And then we think, well, maybe I could sell that, or maybe it's valuable to somebody else. And there's a certain group of inventors that'll take that next step. But one of the challenges with that is that maybe I've not thought broadly enough, and I haven't used what we call design thinking to empathize and think about other people and how they might use the product, or maybe how the product might change and get better when I empathize and consider how somebody else might want to do something and what's that job they're trying to get done. And that's kind of one of the other schools of thought that's out there that is a very good complement to design thinking. And Tony Ulwick and some of the others, Clay Christensen from Harvard did the jobs to be done theory. And so those all intertwine together and really help you form a really good foundation for creating a solid invention.
Love it. All right. So what I heard you say is it's really important to not just design the right thing, but design the thing the right way. Is that how you said it?
Yeah, it's kind of two parts. So that first part is really thinking about what it is that you're going after. What are you trying to help somebody solve? What's the progress they're trying to make? And how can you think about all the different steps in the process they're trying to go through? And then how does your skill set match up with that, where you can add the most value? And you can see some of the most, I guess, greatest product experiences from the whole arc of how you use the product from start to finish. It just feels good to use it. You're proud to be an owner of that product. You tell your friends about it. They just rave about how well this thing works, and every aspect of it is good. And that comes from just really, those designers really thought through all the intricacies of how little clasps work, or how somebody gets the product out, how they put it away, how they fix it, how they just interact with every part of it. And so that's designing the right thing. And so that's the first half.
And the second half is?
Design the thing right. Okay, so that's where all more of the analytical and the engineering work comes in. And we develop tests and prototypes, and not just random tests and prototypes, but we think about how can we assure that we're reflecting back off of that first step that we did, where we defined what we were going to make. How can we ensure that when we deliver it to the product that we fulfill all those promises we made along the way?
All right, I have your slides ready. So whenever you want me to pull them, you want to pull those up now?
Yeah, we can go into that.
Okay, this is the first time. Oh, wow, that was really easy. I was going to say, this is the first time. I don't know how easy this is going to be. So there you go. And I'll jump in. But before you dive into this, I also want to reiterate, you mentioned Clayton Christensen, and he has a great book I would recommend to the audience, our audience today, called Competing Against Luck. And it's just a fabulous way to, there it is. I should have known. I have all of his books too. Disruptive innovation. He coined the phrase disruptive innovation. So that was one of his first. But he's just such a great writer. And he speaks, I think, to the common people, not at such an academic level that even as a Harvard professor, even someone like me who didn't go to college can completely grasp the concepts. And I feel like I understand them in a way that I can immediately apply them to my life, to my work, etc. So, okay, what do we got here?
Well, I thought, I want to share a couple things that sorry, I'm getting a little bit.
That's okay. And actually, while you're doing that, I just want to remind our audience also, feel free to drop your questions. Thank you, Wendy. I'll get to that in just a second. Feel free to drop your questions in the comments, and we will take them in the order they come in just a moment. Okay, Nate.
Okay, so I wanted to give you guys some real practical examples. I like practical examples. I grew up on a cattle ranch in western Colorado, And one of the tools that we grew up with on the ranch was fixing fences. You don't want your cattle, getting out into the neighbor's yard and having to chase them all after them.
Real problems, right? For real people.
Yeah. So one of the tools that is used by every rancher that I've ever met is just a pair of fencing pliers. And one of the interesting things about fencing pliers is that it's different than a Swiss Army knife. And I kind of wanted to contrast these two different things to drive home a point. And I think this will unlock value for certain inventors, because sometimes we get just stuck. You see all these great inventions coming through your feeds or on Pinterest or somewhere, and it's like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? Every time I see one of those, I'm reminded that, well, it's because that person went and mined through that problem. They really spent time, and when you see it, it's obvious, but before you see it, it's not obvious. You have to go and look. Yep. So I wanted to show at least one tip here that people can use to do that mining so that they can find new inventions and unlock new value. And hopefully someday I'll use one of their products. I'm being a little selfish too. But so this idea is to design functions in context. So the difference between a pair of fencing pliers that's used by every rancher and a Swiss Army knife that's used by no rancher. I've never seen a rancher carrying a Swiss Army knife. And it's partly because of the functions are in context. So if you were to look, I didn't name them all, but all the different features on a pair of fencing pliers belong to that domain of fencing. And they've combined everything that they can so that when you're out there, you really just have that tool and maybe a few others, your stretchers and staples and some other things. But that's pretty much it. You can do most of your work. You might not be the best. You might want to use a hammer, if you have something special, but you can get the job done with those fencing pliers. Whereas the Swiss Army knife, it's got tons of functions. You have some that can have, up to 100 different things inside of them, but they're kind of random. You got a corkscrew on one side, you've got a saw on the other, you've got a magnifying glass, and there's definitely utility there, but utility doesn't always equate to value. And so even though the fencing pliers might be a $20 to maybe $50 item, it's used and enjoyed by a lot of people. Whereas, Swiss Army, they probably have a big market share. It probably is successful, but it's for a different reason. But within that domain of ranchers, it would actually not be very successful because it's kind of out of context. So my tip there is when you're thinking about designing a product that might have different features like a knife or a tool or something very practical, think about how the different features are used to complete a job from start to finish. So if you go to the next slide.
Add to stream. There we go.
Lisa, you're doing great.
I'm figuring it out on the fly.
All right. We're all in. So, and this is design tip number 2 that goes with that. So design for context, but also design for the whole job. And think about what somebody's doing with your product from start to finish. And it's kind of a cycle that goes around here, that they would be preparing to use the item. They would be doing the task that they're going to do with it. They're going to be maybe sometimes undoing that task. Sometimes they'll be cleaning and maintaining it. Sometimes they'll be putting it away and storing it. And so as you're going around this wheel, you can think about how you're addressing the user needs in each one of those places. And the equation that I've been taught, I don't know exactly the origin of this, is value is equal to the benefits divided by the costs and harm. So that the benefits that I'm delivering to somebody, they're going to come with some kind of a cost. Maybe it's going to take them more time. Maybe they'll have to spend more money. Maybe they'll, it'll cost them. Sometimes it gets a little bit, if you get into those emotional or social domains, maybe it costs them status or something like that. And then, there might be some risks involved, and that's what the harms come in is, well, I can help them to do something faster, but it's at the risk of maybe they're not going to do as good of a job. Like if I built somebody a lawnmower that went 50 miles an hour, yeah, they're gonna have a lot of fun. They're probably gonna get their grass cut fast, but what's it gonna look like when they?
How good's the grass gonna be? Right on.
All even. And so those are the two big tips I wanted to bring, was that design in context and design for the whole job. And as you start pulling those things apart, you'll see that there's places along the way where you can add value and innovation and find new things to patent, or you might find something that's expired that was a patent from long ago, but maybe that person didn't solve for the whole job, and there's a piece that's been unnoticed that you can go in and fill that need for somebody else.
That's incredible. So, this is something that I harp on. I don't know. If you had to guess, what would you say the success rate is for independent inventors to make even $1 more than what they spent on their invention?
You might know that statistic. The statistics that I've heard, it's extremely low, and
Yep. It's less than 2% is what people say. There's no real hard number because the research actually hasn't been done, but some estimates are that it's less than 2%. And I really believe it's not because people don't know how to patent or license. And yet that's what most inventors think they immediately need to go learn, not how to invent something that will sell. And this is overlooked only because the assumption is they're being empathetic to themselves in their own situation. Like you said, they're in their own domain, and they say there's got to be a better way, whether it's a fence post for a farmer or a bad hair day, like for me with a hair accessory. There's got to be a better way. And then I made this mistake. I just was really lucky the first time with the French twister, and that I didn't really take into context or consideration too much about what the problem was for other people, other than people kept asking me how to do what I did. So I invented something to do what I did, and it happened to be very successful. But as I've developed as an inventor and become more of a professional inventor and done it many times over, what I found is that intuitively I measured the cost, the benefits, the cost and harm, like you're saying here, and was able to do those equations, as well as really doing the research before to be empathetic. I don't think most people, for example, in your company, when you're considering a new idea, what type of research do you do in advance before you make a decision to pull the trigger on it? To be empathetic, to be able to design it well? What do you need to go learn?
It kind of depends market to market. Some industries have different sort of norms and standards for how you step into that. I guess one thing I would think about from a independent inventor standpoint is, are you trying to make a commodity type product that you could sell to a company that would maybe license it from you and take it out that way? Or are you really more about designing an experience or some type of a brand that people could take?
Yeah, in this context, it would be for an inventor who was wanting to probably license a product.
Yeah.
A product.
And even if you're doing a licensing, if you can step in and show the potential company that you're going to license this product to that you've thought about the entire arc that a customer is going to go through, and that there's value to be had, and it's mutual value. You're solving the company's problem, you're solving your problem, and obviously you have to solve the user or the customer's problem first, and that's paramount. But you can show them that you've thought about how these three people are going to balance at each one of these points going along. And at some places, the company might be, the balance might not be exactly equal all the way along there, but along the way, you're going to be able to pull those values out as you go through these different steps.
Awesome. Wendy's asking, I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you do your own testing, or do you send it out to a lab?
That depends on what type of testing it is. If it's something that needs to be certified for safety, or you need to comply with some type of a law or regulatory body, then you're going to need to get that tested by a third-party lab. If I'm just testing for function, for example, this was one of my first oops, if I can get it over here. First inventions that fizzled out. It didn't go anywhere. But this was a lid for protein dispensers. So I would buy this protein powder, and I hated the fact that I would dig into the protein and the scoop was lost.
Always.
But I noticed, like, one of the things I observed was that all the lids for the brand and the store that I was shopping at the time, they all had the same diameter. So I thought, well, why don't I design a cap that would have a mechanism on it? You can see.
I love it.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, there was still some in there.
There was a little bit in there. That's
But anyway, this lid goes on, and it's impossible for the scoop to jam. The scoop won't ever get in there. but I can turn this up over my device, and I can just shake this little knob back and forth, and it goes off. And then I've got a little cap, and it's all sealed. But to test this out, I had to go through several prototypes in my own house and in my own garage. And so those would be like functional test prototypes. Now, then if I wanted to get that certified, or to say that my plastic met some sort of criteria, which I don't think I need for that product, but if I was doing a medical device, then I would send those out. So it's a little of both. You do your own, and then where you need to go outside, you take it outside.
There you go. And someone is asking about the statistics. And again, there's just no hard and fast answer other than the industry has been saying for literally as long as I've been doing this, 30 years, that it's less than 2% of all inventors who get patents make $1 more than they spent overall on their invention, not just the patent, but whatever they've spent to date. And so for that reason, invention promotion companies have been required by the FTC, or is it FCC? Might be both, to stipulate on all their marketing material what their success rate is. So you're aiming for only working with people who are going to promote your invention for you. If that's their job to get you a license, you want to know that they're at least at that 2% or better number before you pull the trigger. Unfortunately, no one has invested the time or resources necessary to really drill down on those numbers. It would be super cool if we could partner with a university, for example, to do that study. That would be amazing. So thanks for asking. All right, Nate, so you had one more slide here. I'm going to go ahead and pop this one back up. And
this kind of ties it together. This is not one of my inventions, but when it comes up, it's really more of an illustration on how to design in context and how to design for the whole job. So I noticed this on a Walgreens shelf. Is they had a pill cutter for slicing medications, and then I noticed another one down the row, and it was a multifunction pill system where somebody had the cutter, the storage, the drink. They had a crusher. They had all of this value chain. And I thought, well, this is kind of a neat little thing I could put on one slide to kind of drive this point home. Is that I could see myself as an inventor, perhaps just trying to solve my own problem, and I could easily jump to the single function pill slicer, and I could run out and get a patent. I could go through the whole 9 yards and get it on the store shelf. But if I would have taken a little bit more time and really thought about the functions and thought about it in context, I might have been able to derive more value and put out a product like the multifunction. And there is a trade-off there, because you need to be focused as an inventor and not let things spiral out of control. So you have to keep your scope to something that's reasonable. But at the same time, if the difference between getting a licensing deal and not getting a licensing deal is, oh, we've seen the pill cutter before, but oh wow, we've never thought about adding these features in, and all of a sudden maybe you could get some traction with that. So I would just caution your audience to cautiously pull on those threads and explore those different opportunities, to think about, in the situation, the context that they're moving forward in, have they really added enough value at all these different places to provide an awesome experience for their customers.
Oh, I love it. It's like music to my ears to hear you saying this, because nobody's talking about this enough, in my opinion. What do you mean by inventing it to the point that it starts to spin out of control? So in other words, how do you know when you've invented it enough, it's better enough to be competitive in the marketplace, but not over engineered with so many features, bells and whistles, so to speak, that now you've just complicated it too much? Where's that magic line, and how do you find it?
Well, one thing for sure is if you start getting more than I love the rule of 7 plus or minus 2, which is kind of a mental thing. You can look it up online. But if you start getting more than 5 or 6 functions, that gets really hard, because then it's like, what are you marketing? What are you promoting? It's like these software programs you open up and they have nested features, menus upon menus. It's like, how do you effectively communicate that? So, once you start getting past 5 to 7, distinct functions, or like marketing bullets, it's like, well, you might have gone too far for a simple product. Obviously an aircraft or, a combine or something.
Yeah.
That's different. But if we take our pill cutter, for example, they have four, distinct things there. They've got a cutter, they've got let's see, what is it, a drink. It's got a cup, it's got a crusher, and it's got storage in there. And those are clearly labeled and identifiable. It was easy for me to see those on the shelf when I walked by. I loved your example, Lisa, of it gave me a new lens to go shopping with when I go out. Now it's like, oh, I'm not just walking by random products. I'm like, oh, this is an experience. I can look at functions and how people are communicating the story of their product.
That's awesome.
And so for me, that's how I would trim for a simple invention is, and then find out, what the customers really want. I might have 2 users that really love this feature, but I've got 10 other users that never use that feature. I should probably consider trimming that or, packaging it into some type of a different product.
And understanding who your user is first is paramount, because you can't answer those questions about what your user wants. You can certainly answer it for yourself, what you want, which is usually where the inspiration came from, right? But evaluating the population of the universe of your personal, your ideal persona is going to help you answer those questions so that you know whether or not you've hit that mark. Are there any special tricks or tips that you can give us about what you use to define the benchmarks of whether or not you're hitting that mark? Like, how do you set the target?
Setting the target kind of depends on what the product is. I guess if you're doing something that can be timed, if time studies have been done for a long time, and if I'm building a technical product where I know that somebody's entering a job and they want to get done, maybe they're not doing it for fun, but maybe it's somebody mowing yards or other things. If I can time how long something takes, or as I work my way around this wheel of how a job gets done, if let's say somebody's going to prepare to, I don't know, cook something in their kitchen, I can actually observe and watch them and do what's called a time study. And I can see, well, how long are they taking to prepare, this portion of it? And it's like, well, if they had this tool, or if this part of it was faster, man, that would make it a lot easier for them if they could do that. Or if we take those fencing pliers, for example, if somebody using well, I guess if I just gave them a Swiss Army knife and said, here, go build this fence, and I could time them and see, how long that would take them. I could use some other metrics or benchmarks and look at how frustrated they got, or, how many injuries occur, if they slip and cut their hands. So there's all kinds of different things you can use to ascribe value to the experience that your customer is getting.
And that is not rocket science, right?
No, definitely not. It's very, very, very humbling, very tedious at times.
But it's so simple. Anybody can go observe people in their natural habitats attempting to deal with whatever the problem is you think you want to solve, and observe and learn. I mean, when I was working with Innovate to Grow experts, one of the team members was on the team for Swiffer and American Express Black Card and Gatorade. And in every one of her case studies, she went out and observed like athletes on the field. What do you do after you've played a game or during practice or whatever? Why do you drink water? Why not milk? Why not soda? Is there anything else you've considered? To learn from them instead, so that Coca-Cola could ultimately create what became Gatorade and this whole new industry of sports hydration, right? It's not hard. Just have to take the time to do it.
So another tip on that is to think about the extremes. To think about, one of my humbling experiences was designing a mechanism that had a spring inside that needed a little bit of grip strength. And I don't think of myself as a big, strong guy. I just think of myself as average, and it had a squeeze grip to it. And I designed it with a certain spring rate or force that when you squeeze down, it would move. And I was very happy with my design. And a colleague picked it up to use it and had a different build than I did. And they really struggled with it. And because of the architecture of that particular product, that spring was kind of the center of the onion. That meant all the other layers had to be redesigned. That was basically like me starting over again. So that was a very humbling experience. So if you're designing a product where the weight is important, or the force or something like that, as long as it's safe to do so, you might want to try that with a child, or maybe with somebody that's elderly, and see how they interact with the product, because the results might surprise you, and you might learn something really important.
User experience is what it always comes back to. So Brian says, I like formulas. So this model, and hi, Brian, by the way, he's a student at the Invention Accelerator, or a member, I should say.
Hey, Brian.
I like formulas. So this model is great. I can see it is useful for discussing this, or I see it as useful for discussing with licensees, but what exactly makes up the numerator and denominator, or does it depend?
Well, yeah, this is a little bit of a fuzzy math. So benefits would be, what are the good things that you're providing for your customer, your sales, your marketing points? What are you doing for them? Or it might even be your licensee. This is kind of a general sort of a sense of benefits. So for me as the inventor, I'm going to derive benefits of different sorts. Some of those might be financial, hopefully we'll make some money on this. Some of it just might be the pride of doing a good job or solving a problem for somebody else. Those would be benefits that would accrue towards me. Some of the costs are, well, it's going to take some of my time. It's probably going to take a lot of my money, a lot of, sweat equity of getting that done. So those are going to be costs. And I guess I'd put those in quotation marks. The harms would be risks, things that hazards that would come up along the way. I might be taking a portion of long-term savings to devote for this thing. So that would be kind of a risk. But at the end of the day, those to provide positive value, my benefits that I'm going to get over the lifetime of this project have to be greater than my costs and my harms. And, and you don't really get positive value until that occurs. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, if not, Brian, let us know. And I'll show you all in just a moment how you can reach out to Nate. But what's interesting here is that the way you just described it was from the perspective of me as the inventor evaluating whether or not I even want to move forward with an idea. And then this also can be a measuring tool for ultimately just demonstrating for a prospective licensee, like Brian was saying, how the product is superior, and here are the benefits, and here are the costs associated with it, and here are the risks we know that we're going to face. So for example, if it still needs UL approval, right, or if it still needs FDA approval, if there's some sort of government agency, that's something that's painful or harmful to the company. So that's where the harm would come in my mind's eye. Cost, if you've already done your CAD drawings, if you have prototypes available on request, if you've already sold some and have inventory available. So what is it going to cost them to get into this business? Anything you can do to lower those costs and reduce those risks on the bottom line and have enough benefits on the top line for investing in it to deal with whatever those costs and challenges that are still there might be. I think that's how you get a winning value proposition, so to speak, for the company to make the investment in licensing in your product.
Yeah, and sometimes communicating the intangibles in a relationship like this is almost as important as communicating the tangibles and the financials, because sometimes companies want to get into a certain market, or maybe they are afraid they're going to get outpaced by a competitor. And so there's all kinds of other things that you can also use this equation for, to sort of frame up those conversations and start really understanding their needs, and helps facilitate some of those conversations a little more.
Right on. A LinkedIn user is asking, Lisa, were you from MN/WI? And I don't know what that means. So if you'll just be a little bit more clear with your question, I'll do my best to answer. Why does design thinking matter so much, Nate? Why is it such an important part of our process when we're inventing our new products?
Well, I mean, you can look in the news almost every week, or you can go to the Federal Trade Commission and look at all the recalled products.
Oh,
you can look at LinkedIn Amazon 1-star reviews, and everybody's probably bought something these days from Amazon or eBay or somewhere, and it comes in and you're excited about it, and maybe it's that first time you use it and it breaks, or it just really is just poorly executed, doesn't meet your expectations at all.
Good point. You nailed it. Good answer.
To me, a lot of those are sometimes they just missed it by a little bit. You know, I mean, the product was like 90% there. Like I would have gone and told all my friends about this product, but they just missed it by a little bit. And to me, that's where if we can cut that off at the pass, that's going to mean that the difference between success and failure for not only companies but independent inventors who are going to be depending on those royalty checks. Because I could do a really great job on a product, I could get it out to a manufacturer, and then if we miss it on the execution, I'm not going to see those royalty checks. They're just not going to
right come. Right. And a lot of people assume that you're done as soon as you license, and the reality is they still have to get it to market, and it has to sell through at the store level before you actually start getting any kind of real compensation, unless you have good minimums. But even that'll go away if it's not selling. So design thinking, as a reminder for our audience, it's really taking an empathetic approach to the user experience. If you're going to just boil it down in its simplest essence, and thinking through all the constituents. Your design thinking for the retailer, for the manufacturer, for your distributor, which is your licensee, as well as for your end user. And so anything that you can do to present it to the company in a way that shows that you have thought through all of those steps in a way that is meaningful to them is going to certainly grease the wheels and make getting a licensing deal a lot easier, assuming you have obviously a good product to begin with. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mentioned competing against luck. Are there any others that you have read lately, or design thinking specific books that you have found useful?
Yes, I have a whole library of them downstairs.
I'm sure you do. For any beginner and really just kind of wants to dip their toe in this and get their mind wrapped around being a better inventor, what would you recommend?
Yeah, let me grab a couple here that I'll show.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'll pop up a question here. Nate, I assume you can hear me. Nate, I have worked on John Deere hoods and fenders, and it was definitely about design for customers. I understand clearly what you're talking about or what you're saying. So that design, certainly the aesthetics are important, Deb. I just want to make the clarification that we're really, when we say design, we're not talking about aesthetics exclusively. It's the user experience. So Nate mentioned empathy earlier. It's putting yourself in the position of the end user, not just you. You discovered a problem because you were going about your day and you go to solve that problem. But to solve it really well, you have to consider all the other people who had the same problem and what their experience is with it, so that you can make sure your solution doesn't just include what would be most meaningful to you, but it has considered a wider audience of people and what's meaningful to them. Nate, you're up.
Yeah. So Tom Kelly and the IDEO guys, they sort of coined the design thinking terms back in the 80s and 90s, going back before that. But The Art of Innovation, that's a great book.
Tom Kelly.
Lots of good ones. They made a newer one that came out later called Creative Confidence. Definitely. This one is really good for anybody that doesn't think they're creative and thinks that they need to outsource all of the design engineering work to other people. You might just want to peel through.
I wrote that down. I haven't heard of that one. That's awesome. Thank you.
And another one that I learned a lot about is the theory of inventive problem solving. It's called TRIZE, TRIZE, and
TRIZE.
Yes, and it's a great consulting firm that I've worked with in the past, Oxford Creativity. Karen Gadd and her team are just amazing. And that tool set in particular is very good for what I call under the hood problems, where I've got this great idea. I know it's good. Everybody around me, I'm getting lots of feedback, but now I've gotten under the hood and we're doing some of the real engineering and making decisions. And I'm trying to fit 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound box.
Yeah.
And I'm stuck. I don't know how to go forward. That whole tool set, it really applies to all of it. I've just personally found the most benefit for it with those types of problems. So those are all great resources. Of course, YouTube and LinkedIn. I know your audience already are digital natives. They know how to go and sleuth stuff out. So I have no doubt that they'll find great resources out there.
Yeah, we use Triz in the Invention Accelerator also, where it's applicable and can be helpful. I got Triz for Dummies.
Yeah. Lily's book. Yes, that's wonderful.
To really try and wrap my mind around it. I mean, it's such an amazing tool, and there are free tools online that you can use to even do some calculation and help you possibly find the answers to your scientific type problems, whether it's inertia or friction or, mass, weight, whatever, like you're talking about. It really does help. Tamara, I'm gonna address your question. I don't know that it will be a really specific answer for you, but I definitely want to try and help you out here. So you say, I'm in thinking phase of purchasing a vintage Chevy bus to convert into a mobile clothing boutique. Yeah, that does sound really fun. It replaces the pop-up, or maybe it's the new version of the pop-up. Do either of you know how to have experience with this or have advice? Hopefully my question isn't far off from this talk. And my advice to you would be with regard to building a business, and this goes for anybody who might be enjoying the program, but also as innovators, you probably have a lot of ideas and they may be business more than product related, and that's fine. Startup accelerators are the best place to go. There's one in almost every single city in the country, certainly in every major city in the country, and they're free. So you can just do a local Google search for Startup Accelerator near me. And if you get into a program, they're often very short, condensed programs that help you basically build the foundation for your business, get all of the help that you need to launch. They help pre-launch businesses as well as early stage businesses, and many times even have pitch competitions at the end to help you raise money to grow the business from there. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that, Nate.
No, I would just say, find, if you can find a mentor that has done, almost that exact same thing before, or as close to it as possible. LinkedIn is great for that, and friends of friends. Just one quick example. I found somebody that had done a business that was exactly like something I was thinking of. And, within just a few, 30-minute conversation with that person on LinkedIn, it answered so many questions that helped me make decisions about whether I wanted to move forward with that or not. And they just gave me 3 things to think about right away. So I would definitely do that. Also think about ways to prototype the idea before you have to commit that capital. Are there things you can go and learn about? Instead of buying a bus, could you do something at a smaller scale first and go kind of test these markets and see what you could sell before you have to make those big purchases? Because cash flow when you're just getting started out is so important.
Amazing. I'm so glad you chimed in. That's so good. Thank you. Andrew is asking, I'm going to let you take the first stab at this too, Nate.
Oh, I know, Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Do you have any suggestions regarding what program to have 3D CAD drawings made for products like your invention for pouring powders? What if I want to then edit or just view the drawing on my Mac and would prefer to use a free app?
Well, I use PTC Creo. That's what I use. So I've got a full commercial license of that, and it's got a free viewer software that comes to it. So anybody that I work with, I can send them those files and they can view them. So that one's maybe a little bit more expensive. I've heard really good things about Fusion 360. I've not tried it yet, but I know that one's very popular for a lot of people. One new one that's come onto the market is called Onshape. It's also a PTC product. It's web-based CAD, which I really think is interesting. So if you're collaborating with people in different places, you can all be on it. It's a little bit too pricey for me at the moment.
Yeah, it is expensive. Fusion 360 will let you, if you put, it's just for hobby, you're not a professional in the business, you can download a free version. And it still gives you what you need in terms of the basics to both view your files as well as edit your files. And then with regard to 3D printing, you can either submit those to 3D printers. There are plenty out there. We had, in fact, Grant Posner from 3D Musketeers on the program recently as an example. And you can send it to them, and they can also do edits if you need to. Or if you have your own 3D printer, then you have to it has to go through a slicer basically before you can send it to the printer. But those slicer software are free and you can download all of those.
Right.
So I hope that answers. Andrew, we have some of that information in the Invention Accelerator. If you just go into the resource folder, and I can point you to that maybe after the show if you want. Brian asks, I have a product that I can manufacture myself and sell from Etsy, etc. I won't make any money because I can't get economies of scale at this stage. I plan to learn and improve from this method. Is this a mistake to sell before it's perfected? Lisa, I plan to share this with the group soon. So Brian is a member, like I said, and so is Andrew for the Invention Accelerator. And so we have a private mastermind group, and so he's going to share it in there. But I'd love to hear your answer, Nate.
Well, this one depends on what you want to learn. If I'm selling anything at a loss, is it truly a loss? If I go back to the benefits equation. So, if I'm going to have negative value, it's like, well, that's not good. So the only way I can get benefits out of that is if I'm learning something. So I would be really careful about that one, and make sure you put some bounds around it and really try to learn something about your customers and get feedback. So like an initial launch of a small group of products, and if you can really treat those customers well, really build your brand with them in such a way that you can get good insights and feedback. Sometimes even if you're giving those products away or use of those products, you get so much in return that sometimes that's a really good strategy. But if it bankrupts you in the process and you can't go forward,
right,
that's the ultimate trade-off there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We are truly birds of a feather, Nate. When we talk about this, when I've talked about this in the past, it's always been in the context of getting those learnings, right? And to your point, we want to address, what are we trying to learn? And therefore, how many do I need to sell to know the answers to these questions? And therefore, what will that cost me to get to that number? And just backing that out can help you answer whether or not it's a good idea for you. Did I miss anything? No.
No, one kind of thing is it's hard to do like valuable statistics on sample sizes less than 15. 30 is preferable. Like if you're doing a quality study on stuff coming off of an assembly line, you want to have about 30 pieces, and there's math behind all that and stuff. But so let's just say, for example, I have this product, maybe I'm going to sell this mouse, and I've made some change and I put it out there. And if I go into a license deal and I've got 3 data points with 3 happy customers, you can't really do any forward-looking projections off of that. You can't really tell them much. But if I could somehow afford to do a group of 15 or 30 of these, and I sold it to a demographic that matched up with what my license group wants to go forward with, and I could show them that out of this 30, so many had these responses, and my net promoter score, whatever was this. It's like then they can start to do projections off that, and you're going to be in a much better negotiating position going forward. Is that if you can get to some of those bigger sizes of products for your testing.
A lot of people probably haven't heard of net promoter score, and it's a one-off from what we do, but it's still a really good thing, I think, for people to understand, and they can certainly Google it. But Nate, before they do, would you just explain what you mean?
Net promoter score is, I forget the exact math, but however many people, you give them a survey of would they recommend this to their friends and how they liked it, and you can roll all that in. And if your net promoter score is high, like 9 or something on the list, then you can make some inferences off of that as to how well it would do in a larger population, and if you're on the right track. And new product forecasting, people can Google that. There's all kinds of different techniques to sort of project how your S curve is going to go. So hopefully it's that S curve where you get a few new people, and then it starts to take off, and it steadies up, and then eventually peters out after you've made some money.
I am literally putting together a webinar right now that essentially uses, you're familiar with IBM Watson or?
Yeah.
So Merwin, you may or may not have heard of also, but it's a much less expensive version of IBM Watson for scoring things and estimating, the crystal ball. What will this product do? And we've put together something based on the Merwin technology that will help us help inventors determine very early what that will involve. It's a preempt to Net Promoter Score. So that hopefully you don't even need it. You just know in advance, which is pretty cool. I know, I'm pretty excited about it. I'll make that announcement for those of you who are still joining us today. I'll make an announcement probably next week on when we're going to be launching that program. So it's free. You'll be able to check that out. I also wanted to let you all know, as we're coming up on our last 10 minutes here, that if you would like to reach out to Nate, you can by going to his website at mastermindeng, as in engineering, mastermindeng.com. You can contact him through the website. You can also learn more about what he does and how he may be able to help you. And you mentioned earlier, Nate, because you do have a full-time job and this is your side hustle, helping other people.
Yes.
There's some criteria there, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to be able to do anything that's a conflict of interest with my current employer because I actually really enjoy designing aircraft and that sort of thing. So I want to keep up doing that. But I also love inventing, working on small scale stuff too. And definitely, if I can help somebody and I don't have a conflict with an existing client or NDA, be happy to review. At least it was so generous to me to do a review for free. So, I can definitely extend that offer as well. If somebody has something they want to talk through, if it's just a 20-minute call, we can definitely get that set up and go from there.
Thank you. And tell him that you saw him here so that he can put it together.
Absolutely.
Derek is asking, other than simply observing the customers, what are other ways to gather customer input without being annoying to the customer? Most people ignore surveys. It's such a good question, Derek. Thanks for asking. What do you think?
Well, this is why most inventions do come from scratching our own itch or meeting our own need, because we are sort of immersed and intertwined with that question because we need to invent something to solve some problem that's meaningful for us. And because we understand it in such a deep contextual way, it's easy for us to just make that leap to whatever the solution needs to be. You're exactly right. It's really hard to try to get into people's business, especially stuff that is really painful or frustrating to them, because that's actually where we want to go. Because if it's really painful and frustrating to them, then we might actually have a chance of making something valuable to them that they would want to exchange their time or money for. So it is hard. And family members are kind of tricky because after you've done it a few times, they're kind of suspicious.
And if they're not the ideal customer, your family members' opinions don't matter anymore anyway. I mean, the real consumer insight is going to come from dealing with people who have that problem.
Correct.
Not just, what do you think about this, mom? Unless mom has the problem, then her opinion is qualified, right?
Yeah, it's having a listening ear and putting yourself in a position to where you're not trying to solve their problem. You're really listening with that empathetic ear to their needs. And hopefully you can find yourself in a situation where you can be as immersed as possible in that context. If I was going to design a jet ski, I'm not going to do a very good job of it in the middle of a city surrounded by concrete. It's like I need to sort of be in that environment and understand what's going on there, how they load it, unload it off of the trailer, what kind of things, what sort of waves are they going over, and that sort of stuff. And when I was designing combines, it's like we spent a lot of time out in the field and talking with farmers and talking with people. And it's like really being in there, and sometimes it's not always pleasant, but there's no other way to connect the dots and deliver designs that perform unless you're willing to do that. It's not a lot of armchair success.
That's right. Like armchair entrepreneurs is what I call people who love Shark Tank and have an opinion about how everybody did it right and wrong. Like, well, you can have an opinion, but remember, you weren't there. There's a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. All right. So the only thing that I would add to that is to put yourself in that, like Nate was saying, to put yourself in that position. I use my Facebook, birds of a feather. If you can find a Facebook group that already deals with that issue, maybe it's a new binky that you're thinking about and you want to go find moms groups with infant moms groups specifically, not toddlers or whatever. And then just asking them, hey, I'm doing research purely for my own help with some ideas that I have. And I'd like to know if anybody else has a problem with the way binkies constantly fall on the ground. If you do, would you be willing to jump on a quick call with me? And just ask them to share that experience with you, what they go through. If you can get in front of them and get into people's homes, people that you know locally, where there's not that geography issue, that's even a better way to see them in their natural environment. That's not always possible. But if you're creative enough to come up with an idea to solve the problem that you're trying to address, then you have to remember to employ that same creativity for every single step along the way to get the answers to the questions, because there's going to be question after every time you get an answer, you're going to have 3 new questions, right, Nate?
and just get going. I mean,
Going.
Somewhere today, you're going to see a problem. You're going to see something. It might be super little, insignificant, but that exercises your design and creativity muscle. Go and try to solve that. And maybe you're not going to make money off it. Maybe you might think of it as a distraction from this entrepreneurial project you're doing. But the cross-pollination that you get from these other side projects is so huge, because it will unlock something that, or just put your mind in a different state to come back and solve that big problem you've been trying to solve. So quick example, I was walking down the hallway not that long ago, and I remember that my grandpa suffered from post-polio syndrome, that he caught polio during World War II. Anyway, one of his legs ended up being about 2 inches shorter than the other. So he had these soles with one of the shoes was about 2 inches taller than the other. You know, and you think about that, well, of course, Nike's not going to make mismatched shoes for all of their customers, but that was important to him. And there's many, many millions and probably billions, one for every person on the earth at least, of these sort of situations where somebody needs a special designed product and it's extremely valuable to them, but you know, it might not resonate as a marketable product to the whole world. But that doesn't mean it should be left undone. And there's somebody out there that needs to solve those problems, even if they're really small. And who knows what you'll discover in the process of solving those small projects. It might turn into something really big. So anyway, I would just encourage you guys to just go out and be problem solvers today, dive in, do designs. And if you need help or get stuck, reach out.
So good. I know that, I think it was Andrew who's also asking if you could spell the app. What was the name of the app that you mentioned you use?
It's Creo, C-R-E-O.
C-R-E-O, okay.
Yeah. And if it's a small project, you can reach out. You know how to get a hold of Andrew.
Yeah, right. And here, I'll pop that up one more time for everybody too, because someone else was asking how to get in touch with you. And Brian, Jason, is that helping answer your question also, Brian? And there you go, Deb. I just popped mastermindeng.com to get a hold of Nate. Nate, you have been so helpful. This whole design thinking process is such an important part of what we need to remember in the early days, so that it makes not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole possible later when you're trying to license. It all comes together if you've truly solved a problem for enough, like you said, a big enough audience, then in a way that is better enough than the competition. And the only way to know that is through empathetic design, which doesn't just mean aesthetics. I'm backing it all down, reducing it, so that people can make sure that they invent things that have the best possible odds for success. So thank you. I'm afraid that's all we have the time for today. I can't believe how fast this goes by. I say it every single week. If you've enjoyed the show today, please help us get the word out by sharing this. You can share it on LinkedIn or Facebook. And I have a new channel for this program on YouTube, youtube.com/InvenTank. We're in the process of uploading all our old shows to that as well, so that you can leave your questions and comments there. I want to remind everyone that you can book a free call with me. As you can see here on the screen, just go to theinventionaccelerator.com. And you can also come back to this program on Facebook and LinkedIn, same place that you're looking at it now. Or of course, in future, we are currently rolling it out, the podcast. We're on a couple platforms now. It's slowly being added to all of the other platforms. So you can Google InvenTank podcast to find us online as well if you want to listen to replays there. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. And Nate, I hope you'll come back. I want to talk.
It was a blast, a lot of fun. I love your audience, and thanks so much.
It goes by fast, doesn't it? Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.